Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Testnaut channel. One of my main focuses throughout this year, I've been focusing on each Hatton clan 1 month at a time for the 12 months, which we've only gotten to 8 so far. One of those focuses has been the relationship between the clans, how Hatton became Hatton, and what clans came in when they did, and or if they were already related to other clans, that kind of a thing. But what does science have to say about that? Can DNA tests confirm or refute any of that? Any of the standard ways we view our clan relationships? FTD DNA Administrator Bruce McPherson is here. He's been with us before. Welcome back, Bruce, and to speak about just that with us.
How are you today?
Pretty well, thanks. Thanks for coming back on with us.
Not a problem. Happy to be here again.
So last time we went over some common terms and the basic idea of testing and why we should and who should and the types of tests. And look for that segment, please, everyone. So Bruce is back with us.
So today I thought it might be helpful to go over both projects and to kind of that is McPherson and Hatton,
Oh yeah,
which I'm volunteer admin for both as we
okay,
discussed the first time.
right.
So I'm gonna just share my screen, and I hope that works.
All
I
right.
did earlier. So what we're looking at right now is what you would see if you had done a DNA test. So I'm logged in from my own account
Okay.
rather than the admin. And what we're seeing right now is the Hatton project.
Okay.
So what you kind of get from this, as we take a quick glance,
Hmm.
is lots of different testers and groupings where they might fall. So something that we kind of briefly covered in the first segment was that just because you have a surname does not mean that you all are in that same family.
Okay.
And we can really see that illustrated in this chart here, which um, really the haplogroups that you're seeing, and a haplogroup is just a big family, really big family tree. Um, there's a number that match a little bit, and then there's a number that match completely different. So taking a look at Hatton, we can see that our haplogroup 1, 2, and 3 here, and 4, all fall into a very, very broad category. I2, you'll see that right there,
Hmm.
and I1.
All right.
So popping over to this screen, we can see that some of those broad groups, the I's, you've got a lot of Scandinavian, you've got a lot of Finland. So you're likely looking more so at Viking type backgrounds.
Okay.
So again, we'll see in that first category, and we don't see the testers. So as an admin, I can see the testers and who they are. Because I'm logged into my own account, you can't see that. So anyone that's worried about privacy, as you can see, all you can see when you're logging in is a kit number. When you enter in your paternal
Oh
ancestor
yeah.
name, where you think they're from, and a haplogroup. So I couldn't tell you who this is based on this. So
Right.
again, I know privacy has sometimes been something that folks bring up with concerns with DNA testing, and as you can see, I couldn't tell you who these individuals are based on what I see here. As an admin, I can see that in my account, but not as a user.
Okay. And those names are
So
provided by the person, right, Bruce?
correct.
Okay.
So yeah, you enter in your own paternal ancestor name. So you'll see there's a group of beans,
Hmm.
um, a broad McPherson here, McQueen, and some Macintoshes and McPhail.
Okay.
So again, that's where all these folks are broadly in a grouping together. So on Hatton, we tend to use very broad groups. Our project on McPherson, we're a little more refined, I guess, in
Okay.
the groupings we use tend to be much closer in time,
Yep.
whereas Hatton, these are kind of broad.
I see. Further back, further,
Further back,
right.
and again, I think some of the folks that so we use a slightly different way for joins too, and that's one of the differences that I found being admin in both projects. So Hatton tends to be very inclusive, where anyone can pretty much join that thinks they might have any sort of connection in there.
Hmm.
McPherson, we look at a bit of a different test. A, do you have the surname? But B, is there some sort of relationship that would be helpful to both project as well as yourself?
Okay.
So we might take individuals who aren't McPhersons and do a Y test if it seems like they might match. But
All
we
right.
wouldn't necessarily take someone who didn't seem like they were a match and they're not a McPherson. Hatton, we tend to be a little bit more inclusive and kind of accept
Okay.
pretty much anyone. Um,
Meaning they, so what are the requirements, or I shouldn't say that. I mean, I joined a few projects, Bruce, and
mhm.
it was my own thinking that I think one of them might be Norse because of my one and other things, but that's all my own choosing, I thought, but perhaps there are some
Well,
parameters
there's
there.
no like all projects can kind of select who they feel like might they can accept or decline any member
Okay.
when you toss in to say, hey, I might
Hmm.
want to join. And again, like for McPherson, we tend to look at the surname. I mean, if you're a McPherson, Macpherson, any surname that is basically McPherson in some fashion.
Because these are the men, right? People,
Yeah,
we're talking
these
about
are
Y
only the men.
tests now, right?
Yeah,
We're talking Y.
and we're only talking about Y test. We're not talking about autosomal right now,
Okay.
which
Yep.
again we covered in the first segment.
All
So,
right.
um, and then anyone who might be joining who might have a lot of McPherson matches and yet doesn't bear the surname,
Yep.
because again, those are interesting because they might have changed their name at some point or something, where they would be beneficial to the study and it would be beneficial for them to join. Folks that don't have the surname and don't match with anyone that are men, specifically to the Y test, we don't tend to accept into the project just because we can't help you, really. It wouldn't help to join you in because you don't match with anyone and you don't have the surname. So
I see. Yeah.
it's kind of just how we look at it in the McPherson group and how it's a little different in the Hatton group.
Okay.
So again, you can kind of see where these groupings come along and these wide groups that kind of match. You might have a couple of different surnames in there. Um, Scrolling down, you've got a new haplogroup. So R1A, again, a very broad group. So again, this isn't Hatton, this isn't McPherson, this isn't McPherson. R1A is a massive group. That
Yep.
like date wise, we're talking way before any of us had a surname. um, we
Okay.
were either R1A or R1B or I or like these are very broad groups.
Okay.
But within that R1A, we have a number of individuals in the project that seem to match at least in that broad group and then can sub-match into a smaller group. So we'll see C1, 2, and 3 are all R1As.
Okay.
Um,
That's their main route, right? And then
that's their very big group. um,
right, and
which
they come down into what, a subclade after that, right? Each to different
it
ones.
keeps breaking down. So again, like when we see these green numbers that are kind of longish, that usually means that that person has done their big Y, their Y700. And
Okay.
that means that this is the real small branch, like we talked about in the first one.
Yes.
it'll go all the way up to R1A though.
Right.
And that's backs, as I say, so far that they're not specific surnames at R1A.
True.
So again, like you've got a number of individuals in this group that are Macintosh. You've got a group this C2 group in the states. This is a very big line, especially in the U.S. It's been there for a long time.
C2. You just says, I see. That's just
Yeah,
something you've given it.
yeah, that's just that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
broad. Um, so there's a number that have joined here,
Yeah.
and then we've got some McBeans in this adjacent group. So again, it's not to say that these folks are all very closely related,
Yeah.
but they all share this very broad group
Okay.
of R1A. R1B,
Mm.
in my experience, tends to be a lot of Celtic families.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of R1Bs usually when we start looking at Scots clans.
Okay.
Um, and again, this is just specific to this Hatton project. You know, certainly we have a number of different branches in here. So we've got some Macintoshes, again, some more beans. And again, like I said before, these beans don't necessarily relate to these beans at all.
Okay.
um, because that R1B and that I1, those are so far back in time that these folks are basically genetically dissimilar. um,
Huh.
so again, that's where a clan, because of the way we're set up and because of the way that we've included individuals from various backgrounds, because it's not all just one name.
Right.
So again, some beans, some different beans. We tend to have a lot of beans, I find, in the Hatton project. It seems to be in Macintoshes.
Hmm.
Um, you know, a section like this, we've got a McBean, a Macintosh, and a Farquharson, and a McPherson.
And
So,
they're sharing this 269, right, Bruce?
and again, M269, big.
Yeah, they're
It's
sharing
sort of
that.
it's
Okay.
smaller than R1B, but it's not much smaller.
Oh, yeah.
M269 is a very, very big haplogroup.
And there's
So
four of our
yes,
clans, right? Sorry, I can't, I'm getting excited now. So there's four of our clans here, right? McBain,
yes,
Farquharson,
Farquharson,
McIntosh, and
Macintosh, and
McPherson.
McPherson, all in
And
this nice big broad category.
yeah,
And again, they're not super close. You
broad
know, you'd have to
category.
go
Okay.
into all these folks and to really look to see if they're close matches or not. But just
Okay.
because we're in this broad category together doesn't mean that we're super close together.
Right. You would need
Uh,
these other numbers, which indicate further testing being done.
yes. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Um,
yeah. All right.
and again, we've got another R1B. A number of these subsequent ones are R1Bs. And again,
Yeah.
Macintosh, McBain, McDaniel, um adjacent Shaw. This one tends to be a little bit. We've got a Macintosh, we've got a McPherson.
No, I see.
So, and again, a lot of these groups, as I said, are can be close together, but they aren't necessarily close together.
Okay.
Um, the haplogroup, I suppose, that I'm most familiar with is this one because this is the one I'm in. um,
Okay.
so, and again, R1B, we're mostly McPherson's in here. It's adjacent to this haplogroup, which once I jump into the McPherson group, um, there's a little bit more meaning as far as these
Okay.
guys to the McPhersons,
Yeah.
um, because this relates to our core Badenoch chiefly line.
Okay.
So these guys are the closest on this one.
So, and you know that chiefly line only when you say chiefly line, you're narrowing it down now. I'm picturing a piece of paper, right, with that big tree on it. I like visual, right? So the just for the folks at home and myself too. So the R1B and R1A and the I as well. That's way up on that page. And
Yep.
it's breaking down into smaller and smaller and smaller, more and more testing being done.
Yep.
And we're getting these green numbers as a result. When you say the line, this is going down in much more further in the microscope to
Yep.
get down to more detail for the chiefly line to be what would it be confirmed?
Right, and the only reason that the McPherson happened to be, beneficial in knowing our chief is our former chief, who has subsequently passed away, but did do a DNA test. So a lot of the chiefs haven't, but ours did, and obviously that's helpful, and that a lot of people want to figure out whether they are that line or not.
Yes.
So scrolling down,
Okay.
I've asked about these because I'm newer to the Hatton group than I am the McPherson. And I've asked about these McIntyres because I know some of the McIntyres in Badnoch area
Yes.
are in Hatton. Then they have their own clan. Otherwise, I'm not sure whether these guys are or not in the Hatton Badnoch McIntyre line or not. But there's
Okay.
a couple of McIntyres in there. Again, a group like this one, you'll see McPherson's and McIntoshes primarily, but with a McGillivray and a Davidson. So again, a big group of a lot of our different lines.
Okay.
Um,
Davidson. It's the first Davidson I've seen, I think. I'm
there
pretty
aren't a lot. Again, beans seem to be pretty well represented. There's
okay.
some McGillivrays. There's some McPhersons that have come over from our project or joined at the same time.
Right.
Macintosh seems to be fairly well represented in various lines, but there are
Indeed.
some names in our confederation that aren't.
Yes.
Davidson's not a massive one.
Do
So again,
projects exist for those all
I
12,
imagine, I imagine.
but
Um,
not for
most
FTDNA?
No, most surnames have got a project.
Okay.
And again, it's all volunteer, so anyone can start a project at any point if there's not one. I don't know for sure. I would imagine there is, but if anyone is inclined to doing so, if there's not one, then you can start it yourself at any point. Um,
Okay.
and again, shouting out to anyone who mentioning surnames that are kind of represented and ones that are less represented, we can always use more. um,
Yes. Right. That's why we're here.
yeah,
Please.
exactly. You see a pretty good grouping of McGillivrays in here.
Uh-huh.
Again, another set of beans. McPherson, Shaw's. So again, this is when we're kind of looking at these projects. All these groupings, as I said before, they're all related. They could be very broadly related. Again, without going into each and individual test, I think it would be hard to kind of conclude that they're closely related. Some could be, some might not be.
Right.
But this is basically how we group folks and how we look at these big sets of surnames and come down to really specific conclusions about who's related to who in a DNA sense. Specific to the Y line. These are all Y testers. These are all men with these surnames. And again, you'll see lots of R1Bs. Um,
Hmm.
more
And
McBeans, more McBeans, more Macintoshes.
yep.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, the Clan McBain is very active with genealogy, and I'm sure they took a cue from their chief when he did that. And also they're very communicative between themselves. They're great with that. Macintosh, it looks like they're second place or something here.
Yeah,
Close,
they and
close second.
some of them partially. It depends how well represented they are, even in the admin team, because we as admins can invite people to join,
Mm,
and can send invites. So I mean, I know again, like prior to me, one of our other admins were a part of the Patton project, but if I know Macintosh has been well represented in the admin team, so that can kind of help because if they get a test in their own project that they're kind of interested in, they can send the invite and say, hey, would you consider joining this project as well?
Right.
Um, I think in general, I've found at least with McPherson and Hatton, more join McPherson than will join the Broad Hatton.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
Mainly because a lot of people's, I suppose, major work is being done with the individual surname that they want to trace. And there might be
Yes.
slightly less interest in the Broad Hatton Confed.
Right. Well, I must say, in support of, I should say, rebuttal to that, maybe I think they should, whether or not you're going to join it, being in it helps others to see,
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
see trends, folks. It helps the general group of everyone to see trends and things that might develop if we get into these broad Hatton groups.
Yeah,
I
and,
think,
and there's no cost, so you can join 100
yeah,
like different projects if that's what you want to do. I mean, I know personally I've got, the McPherson and I've got the Hatton, and then I've joined some of the big haplogroup ones that have thousands upon thousands of people, like R1B. That's a massive haplogroup, and they have their own project for just R1B. But obviously,
yeah,
it's big conclusions they're working on
yes,
of like humankind. And where all these men came from, and the distant tracings through and through the sands of time versus
right,
a project individually. But I would always say you might as well join multiple projects. It's only going to help you, and it's interesting, whether or
right.
not you use it or not. It is very interesting when you start getting into it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if like some of these I saw a few McQueens here and I was waiting for that and I it's different than I thought might happen, but see there's a couple of McQueens
Yep,
here
yep.
and they're in R1B, is it? Uh,
Yep, these are all our R1Bs. So pretty much the rest of them, as I say, kind of the outliers are the I's at the top and
yeah,
the R1As. Whereas these R1Bs, and again, as I said in the first, I'm not an expert, but basically my experience is that it tends to be more of a Celtic grouping.
okay.
Or a lot of R1Bs tend to be Celtic names.
Well, the reason I brought that up was that many of our clans, I'm so into all the history of everything that for instance, McQueen, McGilvray, actually McLean as well, and a few others. I'm sure that not forgetting, just not mentioning right now. Let's say, um, are known as island clans, right? They're known as the island clans, and why wouldn't they perhaps have some I influence there? But
Right,
yet,
yeah,
but yet it could be just participation, Bruce, that's showing us a small
exactly.
representation of I1, right?
Yep, exactly. And I know, like, from what I know, like the McDonald's and some of those folks that do come, in mythology or factual,
Yeah.
from Vikings, really, and crosses between Celtic people and Viking people.
Yes.
A lot of them do tend to be R1As and do tend to be Is.
Okay.
So it does seem to often be the case that that's true, but again, it's really dependent on who's testing and
Right.
who gives the DNA. So that's kind of an overview of Hatton. I'm gonna flip over to McPherson because
Excellent.
again, the McPherson, we do things a little differently. Same basic outline and same basic setup, but in our group at McPherson, it's just on page 2. Um, we tend to be the lines are less broad. Let's put it that way. We've got more lines and they're less broad.
Okay.
And again, I'm not going to go through them all because there's so many,
Mhm.
and again, it speaks to the number of people that come by the name and whatever reason. Um,
Right.
but again, emphasizing the fact that there are a lot of reasons why you could have a surname, and there's a lot of different areas that you might come from, um,
Okay.
and they might it doesn't make you any less a surname. It just means that you've come by it in a different fashion, and you've come by it. You know, eh, something that you have to look into is how you came by it, or
Right,
you might just be from a different region that's adopted a surname in a
right.
different way.
Through
Uh,
travel or politics or geography, you might have come by a surname.
exactly.
Yep. Okay.
Um,
All right.
so I'm just gonna scroll down, being conscientious of time, to just our 32 line. And again, I don't want to spend all my time on 32, uh, but it's often where people want to look when you're joining McPherson,
All
because
right.
obviously a lot of different family trees out there have connections to the clan chief, and everyone's expecting that we're all going to end up in that 32 branch. Again, the fact that we have so many subgroups is evidence that that's not the case.
Yeah.
um,
Oh, neat.
but certainly, like, our and again, these lines are a lot more defined than Hatton, where
Oh, 20.
this is our clan chief line.
Okay. Oh,
And
okay.
this is broken right down to their individual branch again
Yep.
on this tree. And we draw that all out, and you can see, like, this adjacent fella would connect to this point, so it would connect here,
That
and
far
then
down.
and
And
then
then,
yeah, exactly.
okay. And
So
here's,
in our
yeah.
project, we draw out that line and name it all the way down, so you're going to follow it from R1B to M269, which is a little smaller, to L21, which is a little smaller, to
Yeah.
13, which is a little smaller, all the way down to this FGC 32907.
Okay.
And again, that's our chief line in McPherson.
All right.
And everyone else that's kind of near here in that 32 grouping is in the same ballpark. Some of them,
Okay.
including myself, it's quite far out, even though I obviously share the same surname. But it, all the folks that are in 32, as I say, are in that big ballpark.
Okay.
Um, and then all the other folks that are in every other group are in a slightly different grouping. Um, and again, we
They
have
branch
our
off
one,
they branch off before he did.
or like even some of them again, like you'll see we've got our one Bs, lots of our one Bs, but we
Okay. Yeah.
also have our eyes, our IM 223,
Hmm.
um, and that's a totally different
Oh, yeah.
genetic background. M 253. Like, these are
I1s.
dissimilar.
Okay. These are
In
I1s. Yeah.
Yeah, in every sense. And then we
Sure.
have a lot of unmatched guys, and we do come by those fairly frequently as well in our categories. And we have these broad groups where they share the surname, and they're just not matched with anyone.
Okay.
So we all know that, like, all these guys are this very broad category, but it might end there. So they might not necessarily be very related to each other again, all these guys.
Right. They don't go anywhere within this project, Bruce.
No, we just
Or
can't. But they're all McPherson's, or some variation.
okay. I mean,
Um,
would they join the Hatton group? They may match someone, or am I
they
wrong
might,
about that?
and certainly if I ever had a join to McPherson who matched another clan or another, like, then I would certainly recommend it.
Okay.
I even sometimes, like, again, as an admin, can see different trends in those matches to say, hey, I mean, I get why you asked to join this clan, but you might want to think about looking at your matches, joining this other family completely, or a different clan, because it
Okay.
seems like you have a lot of matches that project could help you a lot more than I can in ours. So
Right.
again, you'll see some pretty big, like, this family line again is that R1A that we saw in Hatton. There's a lot more members that you can't see, but it's a very large one.
Okay.
Is kidnap Daniel is a very very big line in the states. Again,
Oh, is that
he's
right?
been in the states for a long time. So, but there seems to be a lot of males. There's certain lines that just for whatever reason have a lot of males. And
No, that says I
it's
won, right? Oh no, it says
that's
11. I'm sorry, group
yeah.
11.
So yeah, it's an R1A group.
I thought it was I won. Okay.
Um, and again, there's you can see all these groupings.
Oh yeah.
Um, and some of them are, as I say, are very defined. You know, some of them are named to the descendant of an individual that they can all tie together,
Ah, okay.
because it's that close in time that we're able to kind of tease it out.
Nice.
So, and exactly, and again, that's the strength, right? Is the more
Right.
people that do it, the the better it is for all of us, and being able to tease out these different groups and really look at, okay, this genetic grouping is here and this one is there, and it's
Right.
fascinating work, and it's fascinating, um, to look at.
Right. I mean, see, I've always been an outlier all my life in various ways, and you told
Mhm.
me I know I'm an I one, so I'm an outlier in a
Right.
lot of this, but I'm thinking that we need an outlier project because maybe there could be outliers in a lot of these Hatton groups that are just sort of sitting there a little disappointed. But if we get them all into that, either that Hatton group or a group of their own, maybe they might start to see some parallels between each other.
Yeah, and certainly, like, I think, again, like looking at individuals who test and don't get a lot of matches. I mean, it can be disappointing. But that doesn't mean you're never going to have a lot of matches. Again, the more people that test, the better the chance that you can come to a better conclusion about what why that is that you're not matching anyone.
Right.
And that could be because there just aren't a lot of people that have tested within your line on the system. Um, or it could be a family lines, you know, that end up having a lot of females, so you don't have a lot of males to test. I know there's been numerous lines that I've kind of followed along in my own family tree to try and find people, and I there's generations that just have daughters, and so
Mm.
that one you can't find a tester; it doesn't exist anymore,
Yep.
for why. So
Hmm.
again, it's fascinating and it's neat stuff.
Absolutely.
It's it's again how the two projects are similar, but there's also those differences along the way where, you know, we've done things slightly different at the McPherson project, and again, I inherited most of this,
Hmm.
or all of it really, because we've had a number of different admins that have set it up this way, um, and then I've just kind of kept it going now.
Well, geez, thank you so much, Bruce. I can't thank you enough for doing what you do with the administration of all of this. You sent me all this, and I've been looking at it quite a while, but I did not know a lot of what I was looking at until tonight.
Well, and again, like just in this individual project, our McPherson project, you'll see, as I say, we have, well, 53 groups. So I'm not counting this group because
Mhm.
basically this is just a family finder. So
Wow,
this is an
53.
these
Yep.
are males that are autosomal testers. So basically they don't count.
Yeah,
They've
right.
done a Y test, but they're just not related at all.
Okay.
But we have 53 different groups of McPhersons that are in here already.
Huh.
And again, that means that there's 53 different groupings out there at least. There's likely a lot more.
Right. Down to four or five numbers in from the left, or what would you say? I mean, when you start a group, we only have a couple minutes left. I'm sorry, but
No
so interesting
worries.
to me. So if you say four or five designations from the left is where a group of the 53 would have to be,
Yeah, so
certainly not way
basically,
back to
like
the
if
end.
like again, we've got these unmatched categories that are really big,
Yeah.
but in general, we're able to see the trend when, as
Okay.
in men's, we see your results. We can kind of see where you might fall. Um,
Okay.
Another word I'll say about, certainly McPherson, I know we don't tend to have too many of our associated families in here, because from what folks have determined in the past, again, they're very different, and they all have started their own surname projects, really. So, say Smith,
Okay.
which is an associated name of our clan,
Yep.
we don't have a Smith project like grouping in here because there's a Smith project.
Oh,
So
good
if someone
point.
joins
Okay.
for Smith, unless you're closely related, we usually will kind of refer over to that project
All right.
and suggest you join there.
I get you. Right.
Because from what I've been told, and again, it's been work that other admins have done prior to me, there really isn't much of a, even though we're associated,
Right.
just like the Confederation, it
Yes.
doesn't necessarily mean that we're closely genetically related.
Okay.
We're allies, we're friends, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're cousins in the sense of genetics.
I see.
Kinship, sure. um,
Right. And
but yeah, so I mean that's something that within our project we've done.
yeah, that's certainly one of the questions I had. Exactly the sentence you just said. That doesn't necessarily add up to kinship in
Genetic
science.
kinship, fine. I mean, again, there's lots of
Right.
people that are friends and allies. It doesn't necessarily mean they're closely genetic relatives.
Right.
But when you look at some of those Hatton groups, you do see, what, there are certain times where we have been, in
Right.
certain surnames where there are those relationships. So yeah.
Well, I got to thank you so much, Bruce, for coming on. The test knot. Maybe we can squeeze another one out of this eventually.
Yeah,
We
for
have
sure.